What we're going to look at today is understanding business models. We'll look at exploration of those various different business models you might want to consider. There's so many of them, so I'll try not to fly too quickly through them all. And also the importance of aligning what business model you choose with your own values and your own business vision as well, because there's no point you choosing a way to do business that kind of goes against your own ethical approach. And in the world where sustainability, ESG, equality, sustainability and governance are so important, there's no point going forward with a business that you can't wake up every day and feel great about. So let's understand what business models are. First of all, business models really are kind of a framework, a bit of structure or scaffolding, if you like, for creating value for people to buy things and then generating revenue from that value, creating products and services, things like that, and getting us to a point where you can then look at creating revenue to come through your business. It's also essential for transforming ideas into profitable ventures. We always want to be able to do that. And it also shapes the way that your business generates and competes in a market up against others. Things like trying to work out what your what your business model is also trying to walk yourself through what your point of difference is, what makes you different from everyone around you rather than just a copy like everyone else will be. So you might find that in some cases where you're going, well, I'm looking at it trying to be someone who is, let's say, wanting to be a bookkeeper because you've worked in a bookkeeping or accounting firm before and you want to take that on. We wouldn't call it a startup necessarily, but it is a business model. And that business model is very well, tracked out. People have done it before. But there is a certain way of operating that kind of business, the way you charge for your services, the kind of services you'll have and how you build them. That all comes from, comes from the way that you will start to make that money and have it come through to your bank account. Now, on top of all that, a business model is something that is core to your business's success. It also is something which allows you to scale beyond just your ability to earn dollars between 9 and 5. So what we don't really need to these days restrict ourselves to is how much can I make per hour? Because it comes to a point where to make your time pay for itself and for you to be able to make the money you need to survive, that the market may not be willing to pay the money you want. Now, two ways you could look at that. You could say, well, if they can't afford me too bad, at least someone will be able to. And you could have a smaller amount of higher paying customers, a more premium, bespoke or boutique kind of service. Otherwise, you can go a lot cheaper and then scale it out by using other methods like outsourcing to places where people's time is a lot cheaper in Australian dollars, at least. And a lot of that happens with virtual assistants in places like the Philippines and India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, even South America and South Africa as well. But your business model also determines how you're positioned in the market and how you can communicate what your competitive advantage is. Why should someone choose you? And it also influences investor decisions around the opportunity to be funded, particularly if something you want to do requires a lot of capital to start with. But say perhaps you're trying to stock a whole lot of stock in a warehouse that you want to sell from there, or if you're trying to grow a business that's maybe a restaurant and you need a premises and a fit out and furniture and commercial kitchen and all that. Your business model will determine how people invest in you, or in the case of a bank, how they loan to you, how they manage the debt that you'll hold in that business. It's important to have a business model, though, because it's what drives how sustainable your business is. And I'm not talking about the full scale of sustainability here. I'm just at the moment talking about viability. So the economic viability of your long-term growth. And you may not want to grow infinitely beyond just yourself, or maybe yourself and two other people. That's fine, but you still need to be sustainable. You need to have a business model that supports the idea that your business is not just around this year, but also around for 2025 and 2026 and 2027. Something that's going to give you something to live on for quite a long time. It also needs to be there so you can adapt to market changes and the need and the trends that customers follow. No one, would have thought that 20 years ago that we'd be paying all of these subscriptions for things, but the technology has allowed for it now that we, instead of paying $90 to one cable TV provider and going, well, that's expensive, but very necessary, we now pay equivalent about $90 for all these streaming services instead, from YouTube to Netflix to Spotify to whatever you use and pay for to avoid having ads coming through to you. It also guides your planning and your decision-making processes. If you have a very specific business model, then that business model will dictate how you plan things, how you'll make decisions around your business. Because if you don't have at least one business model, now you can have multiple ones and you can expand out and change that as you grow. But most of us are going to have one major business model. Then you don't know what you're planning for because you don't know how you're going to get your revenue. It's important to have one. I've already had a look at that. Sorry. So let's look at the components of what business models have. What do they have as part of them? And the first things they do have is a value proposition. I'll explain more about that shortly. Customer segments, a specific type of customer you go for. Sales channels. Are you selling through Facebook groups? Are you selling through television, radio, word of mouth, networking events? Are you looking at revenue streams? Are you going to have one source of revenue, people paying you for your time? Or are you going to have subscriptions? Are you going to have a membership base where they pay you every 3, 6, 12 months in advance to be part of something you're doing? Look at what your key resources are, your key markets, where you're going to sell this into. If you're a bookkeeper, whilst it really is, it is possible to work from anywhere in the world and serve anyone, the reality is you're dealing with people's money, and people generally prefer to see someone in person, at least at the beginning of that relationship. And then maybe they'll go to Zoom calls and Teams calls and stuff. And then have a cost structure. How are you going to handle how you pay for things? How are you going to handle how you'll be able to handle the increasing inflation when it comes to the cost of people and electricity and air conditioning and all the things you have to do as part of your business, particularly if you're selling a physical product, storage costs, all that. How do you handle all that? And all these form part of what we call a business model canvas. It looks a bit like this. This is a very stylized version of it, but the business model canvas, we won't go through here tonight, but it is actually a really fun exercise where you can lay out all of this in a physical canvas or on a computer if you like, where you identify all those things we just looked at. Who are the key partners that help make this happen? Who are your suppliers? Who are the people that supply the software that you're using? What are the things that you do when it comes to this? Do you have to manufacture something, knit something, pack something, post something? The key resources you have. Do you have people? Do you have a computer? Do you have a shop front? Do you have a home office you can work from? And then we move over to the value propositions. And what we're really wanting to do is understand how your product, your value proposition, relates to different customer segments and the ones that you want to sell to. Is it going to be to women between 35 and 45? Is it going to be to young men who are primarily football players? Whoever that customer segment is, that value proposition has to relate to that particular segment of customers through the relationships you build with them, as you see at the top there, and through the channels that you choose to reach them. You're probably not going to reach too many football players through Pinterest, but you will probably reach them through something like Instagram, to a lesser degree Facebook, but TikTok is really big in that segment. So you might go, well, I need to reach them through there, or I need to become a member of a football club as a supporter, and then I might be able to reach them through the direct network connections there. Finally, then the cost structure, as I said, managing your expenses and where they're coming from. How do you keep those costs so that the revenue you're making ends up being more than what the costs are that you're spending? And I know that's I make it sound so easy in about 20 seconds or less. But trust me, I didn't really get on top of my cost structure probably until the last 2 years. In the meantime, I've had months where I make tons of money, months where I lose tons of money. It was just wild until I got those cost structures under control, especially when it came to my cost of human resources. It was just at one point, 30 people, 30 staff. And you can imagine how much 30 staff costs. That's a $1.5 to $2 million business. Crazy, I know, when you think of it that way. So your value proposition is pretty central to getting your customers and keeping them with you as well, because it takes what their needs are, looks at what you're capable of delivering and marries those two things together. It's like you produce something that they need, or you produce something and find someone who needs it. Either way, it needs to be balanced. You can't just say, I'm going to do this thing. I have no idea whether anyone wants it, but I think it's cool, and then get out there to the market and nobody wants it. That's just not a business. That's a hobby. That's something where you can go, well, it's a hobby I went to learn. I've now got a certificate for it. No one really needs this skill or wants it, even though I think it's going to change their world. But the customer just doesn't simply want it. You can go a lot of ways of maybe educating the market gradually by that, by networking your little tushy off, or going to places where you have more likelihood to be heard about what your service or product is. Or you just have to accept that there's not going to be ever a market for you, say, let's say in Darwin, because it's too small to be able to support that kind of service. It also is something that differentiates you from others who do the same thing. So I go back to the bookkeeper analogy. If you're a bookkeeper and you're up against every other bookkeeper in town, what is it that's different about you? You say, oh, well, I've got great customer service. Well, that's table stakes. That's not a difference. Everyone should have great customer service. Oh, I'm available anywhere in the world. Give you a clue here. Every bookkeeper is now, because every accounting system and invoicing system is now available in a cloud version, and everyone can get onto Zoom and Teams. So that's not unique anymore. It comes down to, and I can't tell you what would be unique about you, except for the fact that you will know that there's something in your own values that you deliver that nobody else does, or at least you're not aware of anyone else doing that. So it also is about how you deliver your value to the customers. You align your products and services with what those potential customers want, need, expect, have a pain point about, are utterly frustrated by, that you solve for them. And that sort of thought, going into a rather than going into, I've got this amazing thing that I want to change the world with, and then nobody takes it up. You think of, well, what is it that I do, that I'm capable of doing, capable of selling, capable of sourcing, that fits a need that someone already has? Because when you do that, when you align your products and services with what people actually want, the customer experience and satisfaction is stunning. It really is, because you'll have someone come to you and say, oh my God, at last, I've found something that solves that. And that is what then cultivates loyalty and people going out and literally sharing you with others. And they become these little evangelists for you, going around their social circle and telling everyone about how wonderful you are, or how wonderful your service is, or again, how wonderful your product is and how it's changed their life. They use Google reviews and Facebook reviews, and they go to TripAdvisor and put reviews in there to tell everybody they possibly can who wants to hear it about how good you are. Now, your profit formula is essentially, it's like the income versus your expenses, and making sure there's a positive cash flow there to be able to support that. But it's really that blueprint for generating revenue and controlling your costs. And this is how you determine your price and what we call a profit margin. So your pricing strategies can't just be, oh, I'm going to come in at 75% less than my competitors because I've got no overheads, because I'm working from home. Because you'll soon find that that's not sustainable. Trust me, that's where I started. I came into the Darwin market selling websites at $99 each. I ended up working for about $9 something an hour once everything was said and done. And it was certainly not something I could live on. I had to have a full-time job in the side to do it. Now I'm doing a lot of bigger contracting, like for the Darwin Innovation Hub and the Paspalis Innovation Investment Fund and Charles Darwin University and the Trade Investment Commission of Queensland and Tourism Central Australia and Tourism Top End, the Northern Territory government, all these places, they've got these little contracts here and there that then generate my revenue for me and have an incredibly low cost. Now, they require my time, but I tell you what, when I'm producing all the things I produce for them, it's not just me doing it. I've got a cost management structure, which means that I'm too expensive to do all the work. So I then outsource that to other people to do that background work for me. It comes back to me. I make sure it's compliant. I make sure it's got a good quality, and then I can push it out to those various people that I work with. And that's been essentially what my profit formula has been. In order to get my profit up without raising my rates to a stratospheric level, I've got to find a way of getting around the limitations of me only being able to work for up to 10 hours a day. You might look at that and go, holy crap, 10 hours a day, it's way too much. Well, sometimes it's 7 days a week at 14 hours a day when it's needed, but not always like that. It's also critical for the stability of your business and allows you to grow if you want to grow. Your profit formula has to simply be something that you work out that allows you to have a gap between your costs and your revenue. And you will do all sorts of things with that. Now, some people, their profit formula is to reduce their costs to the lowest possible level. Others is to increase their cost, or their pricing to as high a level as they possibly can. That way they can serve less people with more quality, more time, and be a premium provider of something. So you can choose whichever way you want to go. You might want to be, very, very affordable and very accessible, or you might want to be very exclusive and only for a certain set of people. It's certainly easier to work with a higher level of client. I've always said that the smaller the client, the bigger the problems, and that's certainly been my experience. But then again, you could hit that really big client that has massive expectations that really trouble you and really cause you problems. So no profit formula is perfect. You find the one that works for you, and you need to balance those costs and revenue streams, identifying where your primary revenue sources are and the primary costs, where they're coming from, because there's going to be one or two things that drive 80% of your revenue. I like to have a nice even spread. I don't like having anyone have more than 80%, even more than 50% of my revenue. At the moment, I've got one particular whale that's taking up about 60% of my revenue. So what I'm trying to do is vary that a bit more, because the reason is I want to be sustainable over a period of time. If I lose that one big client, that's 60% of my money gone very, very quickly in one fell swoop. I don't want that. So you need to then optimize how you spend your money to allow you to have profitability and some kind of sustainability as you're going forward. In my case, lots of little fish, rather than one great big whale. And also balancing short-term gains with long-term financial health. Now, this could be a lesson for life in general, balancing the need to get immediate gratification with having some sort of long-term health in your life. I'm just recently turned my health around in quite a dramatic way, and I'm now gymming, every single day of the week, and going for like treadmill runs and all that. And I haven't exercised in 5 years. But for me, it's about a short-term pain for a long-term gain. Just like in your business, you might have to take a short-term pain of not spending on business cards and merchandise and people to design your logos and wonderful stationery and stuff, in terms of waiting till you're in a position to afford those things. Consider you're a no frills outfit until you can afford the frills, because that's going to help you to balance those costs and keep your revenue nice and intact. Now, the strategies for profit maximization that come from quite innovating your pricing models and revenue channels, getting very innovative about it. So not just going, oh, I'm just going to sell it for more money. It could be looking for cheaper sources of labor, cheaper sources of product, cheaper sources of software, using things like AppSumo to get lifetime versions of software rather than buying Adobe or some sort of really highly expensive subscription software. I use that in many cases, but when it comes down to it, Canva is one of my big costs. I'm not really that big. It's like $20 a month or something, $19 a month. It's not that bad in the bigger picture for the money I make because of the things I'm able to do with it. Maybe streamlining your operations. Have you got too many people that you need to sort of put someone aside and you've got too many of them? Or expanding your market reach and customer base. That's very a McDonald's way of looking about it. Just get more restaurants to reach more people, and the more people you've got, you can maintain a lower cost for the products you're selling, simply because you've got millions of burgers being sold as opposed to 30 burgers a day in a small boutique burger barn, where your customer base needs to pay a lot more in order for you to make any kind of money to live on. So your key resources section in that business model canvas is about categorizing what kind of resources you have, your people, your financial capital in the background, physical resources, like rent, premises, computers, stock, and then your intellectual resources, the things that you own, the ideas you have in your head that can potentially be trademarked or somehow protected in some way. And then you allocate resources from each of those little bits and pieces that you've got in a formula that has the maximum possible impact on maintaining your higher revenue and your low costs, ensuring that you have enough availability of all those things to get the business running and keep it running. If you don't have enough people, you can't get the work done. If you don't have enough money, you can't afford the things that help you to grow, and you can't afford the people. If you don't have the space, you don't have somewhere for people to work, you got to figure out how to make them work from home. It's always just a give and take game. You just work it out yourself. It's when you start listing it down in something like a business model canvas, that makes a lot of sense. It's on a spreading big piece of paper that you can go, that's where my problem is. That's the thing I need to solve. Now, managing your resources to optimize your performance means taking a bit of strategy in there, making sure that you've worked out what the path is to get from where you are to where you want to get to be with the resources you have, and making sure that that balance you find aligns with what your goals are and your vision and your values. Because if you do it just for money, it's not going to last long in your head. You won't keep waking up every morning just for the money. Honestly, if you want to do that, go work for the government, because it's a way easier thing to do. There's also a continual assessment and reallocation based on that performance as well. Your processes within your business, another important part. And that's where we start to look at understanding what they are. Like, what are the processes that you need to put in place that make it absolutely critical to your operations? What's going to keep you going? What's going to keep you growing? How do you, one of the things you can do if you're working online a lot, you basically get something like Loomly, or you get some kind of thing that's going to record your screen as you're doing things. Even doing it on something like Zoom, just recording it into Zoom is a great way of just putting down your business resources. And there's a lot of AI tools now that you can plug into something like Zoom, which will actually follow what you're doing on screen. And it will say, first do this, second do this. It actually interprets what you're doing, knows what apps you've been into, knows whether you've gone here or gone there, entered this or entered that, and then records that on a flow chart and a process for you. I can't remember the name of it, but it is bloody brilliant. And I'm hoping to find it and use it again myself. And then making sure your processes work for your customers, because if you've got processes which are so tight that you can't really move one way or another, you get the problem. McDonald's gets that problem because their staff are taught in a very scripted way of how to do things. The minute you say something that's off that's off the menu, or it's a variation, they kind of lose it and they go, oh, I don't know what to do here. I need to get a manager. Where you want to make sure that those business processes don't break down your customer experience, and having some improvement for that sort of stuff, continually improving your operational excellence. So you make sure that where you find the holes in your processes, you plug them up. You might have a production process, a quality control process, a sales process, a delivery process, or a customer service process. You have all of these different processes in your business. If you can document them, put them down in some sort of way that people can see what you're doing, it makes life so much easier. And then use methodologies like Lean to be able to streamline them. So you want to use like technology, for instance, ChatGPT, AI. Use the tools that you can get hold of that help to make those processes so much easier to follow. So what are some of the business model examples we're looking at? Well, there's a lot of them to consider. I won't lie to you. Let's see. Before we explore them all, make sure you pick one that's right for you, right for your customers, right for your values. Try to avoid just going with what's trendy right now, because that's not going to be helpful for you at all. Different models suit different industries. So you're always going to have this problem where you're thinking, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? Is this going to cause me problems? Or is this going to be something which I can do without it being a big problem? So just make sure you do the right thing for yourself and your customers, and you won't go wrong. Now, the types of business models we're looking at start with the subscription-based model. Netflix, pretty good example of that. And pretty much everything we do online is through recurring payments, right? Netflix has a streaming services model, which is based upon a monthly subscription. The benefits are that you can predict what income is coming in, and you tend to keep people for a certain amount of time, simply because it's nothing they have to pay up front. And even if they do pay up front, which you can do for a year's worth with Netflix, you're there for a year. They don't have to keep chasing you. So by having some kind of subscription-based model, you got a bit of money coming in every single month. Really good model. Then there's the freemium model where you add a free basic service and then have premium offerings. A lot of apps do this. Apps on your phone, they'll give you the free game. And then if you want to get extra jewels or extra legendary objects, well, then you might have to pay a little bit to get that. Another premium offering will be Canva. Canva gives you a free version, which is limited. You want the rest of the stuff, then you need to go with the premium offering. Spotify's free music streaming is an example of that. They've got an ad-free premium option that you can then pay for. If you don't want to be able to, if you don't want to hear the same ad 3, 4, 5, 17 times an hour, you get a big user base, incremental revenue from upgrades, and you can always sort of have extra things you upgrade with as well. The direct sales model is more like Avon, think it like that, right? Or Tesla. Tesla's a really good example of that. They don't have dealerships. They sell cars directly to customers. They're one of the few car manufacturers who people will buy a car without ever having driven it. They will have no idea what it feels like, looks like, and drives like. They just trust that it's okay because it's a Tesla. Selling directly to your customers means you don't have middlemen. You don't have people taking extra cuts. So it generally means your profit margin's higher because you're not paying dealers and you've got a direct customer relationship. So if you're making something yourself and posting it out, you don't have to go through Amazon or Apple or Facebook and lose money on advertising or some sort of cut of the revenue because you're using their way of doing things. Well, that would be what selling directly is. It's like Avon as well. You're selling directly to people in their homes. E-commerce marketplace model is using things like Amazon as an online retail marketplace. It's got all the reach of the world, very scalable, and they have lots of different ways you can manage the revenue through there, whether you're using Amazon fulfilled by Amazon, which is their method of stocking your stuff in their warehouses for quick delivery out to your customers, or you can sell it where you do the distribution and logistics, and it doesn't quite cost you as much to sell on there, but you're also probably not going to be found very easily on that big system either. On-demand service model would be Uber. Whenever you want it, you order it, you get it in real time. It's usually quick. It meets a customer's like right now needs, and it can scale out quite far. You've got lots of flexibility. So if your on-demand service model could be a localized version of Uber in your city, well, then that's something you can start up. But you're up against a big competitor in Uber and Ola and Didi and all those other ride-hailing services as well. The franchise model is like McDonald's, a global fast food franchise network, which you can grow so quickly with that. You can reduce the risk. There's not a lot of McDonald's that ever go out of business, and you've got the leverage of working off a brand that's already established wherever you are and very, very well known. It's got the method to do things. You don't have to think of anything except for just how to just keep it running. They've got everything set up for you, but your average McDonald's restaurant is going to cost you about $5 million to set up. So just bear that in mind. It's maybe a very, very cool model to have, but franchises cost money to set up and ongoing licensing fees and percentage fees often of your takings too. The advertising-based model is generating money through advertising. So you might advertise products through your Instagram account. If you're an influencer, you could, well, TV and radio are the perfect example of this. Or Google, they have lots of people coming to their search engine, so they can sell ads in that search engine. Very, very scalable. You can make massive, massive revenue, and especially in the online age without too much investment. That said, though, you have to generate lots of traffic to a website to get people to want to actually pay you to put ads on there. So is it a viable model? Well, you've got to find an audience first, and that's a whole different thing. Now, being agile when it comes to your business models is very important simply because things change, right? You may need to change things up. Like Netflix has moved to an ad model. You can pay less for Netflix every month, but you have to see their ads. And to be quite honest, I think I'm so used to not seeing ads on TV that I don't tolerate ads. When I'm at my parents' place and they're watching reality TV on channels 10, 7, and 9, and these ads are constantly coming up at 17 minutes an hour, holy crap, I can't deal with it. It's just something I don't deal with well anymore. Woolworths, for instance, has added a marketplace outside their own stores. You can buy things from Woolworths online now that aren't stocked in the stores. So, for instance, I went to buy a portable induction cooker top. and it was just one that I could take in the car or take camping or something like that. But they don't sell it in the store, yet they sell it online. So you have to order it and it'll arrive here, being where I am in Darwin, a 6 week process or something like that. Or it could be banks moving away from branches simply because people don't need them much anymore. I know when you need a branch, it's good to know it's there. But honestly, I haven't been into a bank branch for over 20 years. So I don't know why people go into bank branches, I guess to deposit coins, or like, you don't even need a branch to open an account these days. So I'm not really sure what they're used for. But banks have now moved into a lot of these kiosks for a little bit of customer service, or the service center for banks is now more about loans and their financial products rather than just for banking. Um, it might bring on change if the trends in business model innovation happen. You might just find there's a new business model that comes up. You can go, that's a great way of making money. I could work off that. I'm not sure what kind of new ones could come, but then no one expected the subscription thing to come through. So as such a dominant trend in business models, you might also find that in order to sustain some level of competition with your competitors, you have to change your business model. If you're doing everything that's only in person and not doing it online, then you need to make that change. I'm doing that right now. Like, I can't always get a big group of people to come into the Darwin Innovation Hub to teach them in person. So I can reach more people in more ways and have a lot more impact in the area that I want to have an impact by going online, changing my business model as well. And look, responding to changing market dynamics and consumer preferences, you might find, and a lot of people find this now, that subscriptions are something they want to try and get away from. So there's some people who are like, no, I'm not paying another subscription. I either buy it and I own it, or I don't get it at all. So that's something which a lot of Gen Z and millennials have done when it comes to music. They don't want to rent their music from Spotify. They want to own their music on vinyl. Of all things, they want vinyl because it's ironic and retro. And yeah, I can never work out that generation, to be honest. Sometimes the role of technology will change things as well. You can use social media to reach audiences you couldn't before. AI is now having a big role in customer service. When you're talking to a chatbot, they're getting a lot better now. They used to be really, really bad. They're getting a lot better now. In fact, one of the people that I follow and work with on a regular basis has created a chatbot that basically reads their website and can answer questions about any of their products, any of their thoughts, any of their opinions, based upon the blogs and the products that are in that website. It's pretty amazing. And personalization through customer relationship management systems and email systems, and making sure that you can reach people in a more personal way, not just sending them off a newsletter, but depending on the segment of customer they are, they'll get a specific and very tailored thing for themselves. That once upon a time would mean we'd have to write 15 different newsletters. Now it might be AI that helps you write 15 different newsletters based upon the one newsletter that you originally wrote. There's also the sustainable and social impact models of business as well. And this is where Tom's Shoes, for instance, do a one-for-one giving model. You buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes. Zambreros does this at the Mexican, the chain. They do a meal for a meal. You buy a meal, they give a meal. Who Gives a Crap gives 50% profit donation to charities that help provide water supply and healthy toilet infrastructure in places where that doesn't exist. If you don't know Who Gives a Crap, it's a online subscription service, that subscription thing again, for toilet paper. Right, it's made from bamboo, or it's made from standard toilet tissue, and everything's recyclable, everything is compostable. Nothing in there is wrapped in plastic. It's all just wrapped in paper. So that's their particular model. Hybrid models might be Apple. They've got product sales, but they also have to have subscriptions, and they've also got some services in there as well. They don't just do one thing alone. They don't just sell hardware, they sell subscriptions and services on top of that. Woolworths has retail, hospitality, they own pubs, they own liquor shops, they own a software platform now that's used for being able to manage logistics and stuff. They're a software developer now too. The benefits are that you diversify where the revenue is coming from, so you're not so vulnerable to things changing in just one revenue model that you might have. So if you're just selling your time for money, then if things change drastically and no one's paying for your time anymore, the idea is to have something else that will keep going. And it's a very different way of looking at the workforce than what we're used to, which is like work for the same place for as long as you can, work one job, work a 9 to 5, go home, have all your time off. Now we're looking at that going, that doesn't really work that well anymore because the economy is very unpredictable. Things are not the way they were. Having a job does not guarantee any kind of security whatsoever. And I learned that back in 2017 when I was with a company for 13 and a half years who suddenly just made me redundant and I was gone and I wasn't prepared for it. I walked away with a payout, but yeah, there's not much to live on. The benefits very much outweigh the sacrifice you may have to make. The challenges with these innovative models is they need to navigate the market and you need to see whether your consumers, your customers actually want to work with you on that. If you're going to charge subscriptions, then make sure they're going to be happy with that. Balance your innovation with feasibility. So make sure you're actually able to pull it off. Subscriptions aren't the easiest things to run. You can run them through Stripe and PayPal. Yes, you can do that. But if you don't have those services, how you run subscriptions is actually going to be a lot harder for you if you're just constantly sending out invoices to people to pay. Gary Vaynerchuk has a particular model that he uses called the jab, 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 right hook, which is the triple JRH. Jab, jab, jab. It's very boxing thing, jab, 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 right hook. Except I just went jab, 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 right hook, other way around. That's right. Right, this is my right hand. He has that model because he's like, provide value, provide value, provide value, and then people will come to you and support you when you do ask to sell for them to buy something. So the idea is prove your ability to be able to deliver, and people will come to you. And then when you do ask for them, then they'll be there ready to support you. Alignment with your vision is so important because you need to work out what you want to achieve. Do you want to make money? Do you want to free yourself from the shackles of the corporate Australian environment? Do you want to be more sustainable, governance, environmental and social sustainability, or what we call the triple bottom line, which is being, financially sustainable and ecologically sustainable and socially sustainable as well? Are these things important to you? All of those things will factor into what business model you're going to choose. Like I said earlier, no point in choosing a business model that you can't feel happy about and with a very, very, very clear conscience, because you won't want to keep doing it. Now, my own personal business model is based upon my values. So my vision is to help businesses to save the world, because I have a core belief that only business can save the world. Not-for-profits can't do it. Charities can't do it. Governments, God, they're just too indebted to everybody to do anything. So I look at that and go, well, it's only businesses that really are positioned to be able to save the world. So my job and my vision is to help those businesses to save the world. And that means I've got then a mission, which is down the bottom here, to provide businesses with the digital and entrepreneurial skills to achieve their goals through free classes, premium custom coaching, and partnerships with those who can connect me with those businesses. So it's all about collaboration, a freemium model, then a premium model on top of that. And that's what you will do for yourself. And that's why we have visions and missions in businesses. It's not just for pretty words, but it really aligns with what you are and what you want to do and how you feel and what your values are, what your ethics are, what the things are that are important to you. For some people, there's a spiritual religious thing that they have at the core of their vision. For some people, it's a very a personal thing. I want to leave behind a legacy for my kids. I want to leave the world in a better place than what I found it. So whatever your vision happens to be, that's what's going to drive the decisions you make about your business model. And my business model is right there in my mission. Free classes, premium custom coaching, and partnerships with those who connect me with those businesses, like the partnerships I have with CDU and with the Northern Territory Government and Darwin Innovation Hub and the Queensland Government and the South Australian Government, the Western Australian Small Business Development Corporation, all those places that I work with to be able to help me to achieve what my vision ultimately is. So this is what I do. I have an audience level of what I do, which is contracting with existing projects, providing free basic classes supported by others. So others are paying for it, government, or in my case, sometimes CDU or the Darwin Innovation Hub, and I'm providing one-to-one coaching supported by others, where it's being paid for by someone else to be able to do those things for free. And then I have who my customer is. So my audience are all those people. My customer is the person who books my private sessions, the person who books my private one-to-one coaching, the people who come to my advanced classes, or they buy my premium online services like LinkedIn ghostwriting and that kind of stuff. So that's my business model. You'll work out yours in a similar way. Think about who your audience is and who your customer is. Your audience could be on Instagram and they're great people and they comment on all your stuff and they're fantastic and they're fun and they're very, very chirpy and very perky, but they're not buying a thing from you. Your customer is buying stuff from you. They're actually paying for you to be spending the time building your audience. And you've got to have both, because audience can become customers and customers can become audience, but ultimately it's all paid for by someone, either the customer or in my case, where I contract to existing projects that other people are running. And then that's helping to fund what I'm trying to do. So how about you? What will be your particular business model? How are you going to work it out? How are you going to make this work?